What's up, guys? Welcome to Fatherhood on the Field podcast. I am your host, Luke Sawyer, and I am here with Mitch Hauschild. Now, tell me if I get your title correct, but rehab coordinator or head athletic trainer? What's your title at Missouri State?
It's too long of a title, but I'm not the head athletic trainer. I'm the prevention, rehab, and physical performance coordinator.
Good. I would have got that wrong.
Yeah. So basically what it means is I'm in charge of all of our injury prevention strategies, as well as our rehab strategies for the athletic department. So we've got 17 sports, about 420 student athletes. And I'm an athletic trainer by training, and I work in our athletic training department, but I don't do any sideline coverage, any kind of traditional athletic training stuff. I work closely with our strength coaches and closely with our other athletic trainers at looking at what kinds of things we can do to remain healthy, as well as when an athlete does get injured. I've got kind of the higher end rehab, knowledge and skills that I've gained over the years to be able to get them back on the field quickly and efficiently.
Sure. So how long have you been in that role?
14 years now. So
okay.
It's hard to believe, but 14 years I've been at Missouri State here.
That's awesome. So you and I go back a little while, at least to probably 2016, I believe.
Probably something like that.
But as we're talking about this, I look up to you in a lot of ways as a husband and a father. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your family, kids dynamic, dad life?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, before I go into my family, I would reciprocate that I look up to you in a lot of ways as well, and just you shaped my faith journey over the last few years. So, but I think it was probably 16 or 17 we met in the Dominican, and I was on a mission trip, and we got to meet up down there, and been a good friendship since. But so I've been married almost 19 years now, and got 4 kiddos. 14, 13, 10, and 7, 2 boys, 2 girls. So my daughters are my oldest and my youngest, and my 2 middle kids are my boys. We're a little bit of a unique family in that all of our kids are adopted. We always kind of laugh that we're sort of the United Nations at our house, and not intentionally. My wife and I, some people always say, "Oh man, you guys are so amazing. You're doing all this amazing stuff." The reality is we adopted out of necessity. We battled infertility for about 2.5 years and finally just said the heck with it. And we'd always been open to adoption, but we started going down that path, and it's been a huge blessing for our family. But our daughter Landry was adopted from South Korea. My 13-year-old is a local adoption here in the Springfield area. My wife was actually in his delivery and brought him home from the hospital. And then Zion, my 10-year-old, was an Ethiopian adoptee, and then Shay, our youngest, was from China.
Okay, man, that's awesome. Well, and that's kind of the reason that we're connected, right? Because prior we're connected through Man Up and Go, the organization that you founded, or at least had a part in the founding of, right. And that really had its hearts and its roots around adoption and foster care and caring for the fatherless and getting men engaged in that. And then I met you because you guys were down on a missions trip in the DR where I was living, talking about fatherhood, talking about masculinity, and working with the coaches that we were working with down there. So tell us a little bit about Man Up and Go, because I haven't actually talked about Man Up and Go on this podcast at all yet. So
right. So Man Up and Go, we exist to fight for the fatherless kids around the world. And we were started sort of by accident. Like you said, 2011, a couple of my good friends had invited me along. They both have Ethiopian adopted kids. So Roger Gibson and Rob Neal, both at the time lived here in Springfield. And at the time we had our oldest, our 2 oldest kids we had adopted, and we were kind of trying to figure out what the next step was. And we knew we wanted to adopt again. We weren't sure what we were going to do, and we were sort of looking at Ethiopia. And so I sort of had this gravitation towards Africa for some reason. And they came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to do this men's mission trip to Africa. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. Let's go. I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm in. Let's go have fun." And so then I actually called up one of my childhood friends, Jason Clement, who I know you know well. And Jason and I have known each other since we were in preschool. And they were getting ready to adopt from Ethiopia as well. And I said, hey, why don't you come along on this trip? And sure enough, he jumped on board. And so we ended up with like 43 people on that first trip, which was crazy to think about because we never have had teams that big since, kind of intentionally. But we went over, spent 2 weeks in Uganda and Ethiopia, had a blast. And what really God started to reveal to me in that moment and us, the four of us, was that, we would go into these orphanages and these schools, and you would see women as the primary caretakers, and men were nowhere to be found. And if you did find them, they were playing cards on the side of the road at 2:00 in the afternoon. And we started looking at it going, man, what? And so the kids would just gravitate to us. And so we got home and we kind of went, wow, that was a lot of fun. Maybe we should do that again next year. And so the next year we had 2 trips. And then the next year, I think we had 3 or 4, and that started to snowball. And we started talking with our partners on the ground in Africa, and they were wanting more, and not just us coming to play with kids. They wanted something to help motivate men to get off the sidelines and be the leaders in their homes and communities that we all believe God intends us to be. And so we started doing these men's conferences, and we were really nervous up front. Are we going to have 2 people show up or 20 people show up, whatever? And then, the first time we did men's conferences, we had 800 men show up, and we were just in these local churches, and just amazing, cool opportunities for God to work in the hearts of men. And so from then it's just snowballed, and we incorporated, I think, in 2014, and now we've got multiple full-time employees and a board of directors, and we're doing work in a number of different places around the world. And so it's been a really amazing, wild ride. But yeah, it did start with just some adopted dads who wanted to make an impact on the world orphan crisis. But what we've learned over the years is that children benefit in every way imaginable by having a loving father in the home. And the research really points to that. It's not just us saying that because we're believers or whatever else. And so we just want men to be better dads and better husbands and better leaders in their communities. And so that's the real goal of Man Up and Go overall.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. And it's so cool to see where the organization is now compared to that trip in 2014, of just the impact that it's having. And really the fatherless crisis, this epidemic of just broken masculinity that we see around the world. And it's irrelevant of what location around the world it is. This is a global thing. And one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on here is that masculinity and fatherhood and athletics, all these things kind of permeate from you in everything. Right. Even as I follow you on social media, I mean, you and your son were just biking across the state of Iowa just a week ago. I mean, tell me about that experience. What was that like?
Yeah. So, and before I go into that experience, you are exactly right. It doesn't matter where in the world you're looking at here. This broken masculinity is a huge issue. And you look at some of the worst terrorists and worst people in our world, you go back to it. Most of them didn't have a dad. Right. And you look at inner city problems here in the US, and those kids don't have a dad. The prison system, they don't have a dad. And so we do have I think it's an overused term, but a bit of a crisis on our hands
100%
of men just not being great husbands and fathers. So, but yeah, I mean, the experience, RAGBRAI, some people might be familiar with it. It's known as the largest and longest running bike ride in the world. And this is the 48th year, I think. And I grew up in Iowa, so I was always around it. But then a few years back, I decided to ride it for the first time. And then Jason, that I spoke about earlier, he was also, raised in Iowa because we went to school together, and he wrote it, but wrote it separately. And we both came back going, man, this could be an awesome opportunity for us to get Man Up and Go engaged. So we started running teams through the organization as a way to spread our message. And because you're going to have 30,000 riders on any given day on RAGBRAI that are riding from town to town across the state of Iowa. So we use it to spread our message and then sharpen each other's men. We do devotionals every morning. We serve in local communities. So we'll ride 70, 80 miles on our bikes and then go help serve meals with a local church, or this year we served the Air Force team, and just tried to do some work with them and give back to those people that do so much for us. And then we use it as an opportunity to raise money for the organization as well. And so as my kids are getting older, so this is my 7th year riding RAGBRAI, it's been a desire to get my boys involved, just because a great opportunity, number one, for me to share memories with them, right? But more importantly, and from my position is, we get 13, 15, somewhere in that range, a good, godly men together for a week to challenge each other by riding bikes and challenging each other through faith and everything else, sharpening each other. Those are the men I want to surround my boys with.
Yep.
And unfortunately, you and I can both agree that the messages our young people are hearing every day through the media and at school and everything else is not necessarily the message we want them to hear. And so for me to be able to surround them with guys that are, we've got guys that ride with us in their 60s on their down to their early 20s, but they all have one thing in common, is that they're chasing this great relationship with the Lord, and they want to serve other people and just be good, solid men. And so for me to bring my son at 13 along, and one of the things I kept telling him though is, hey, you're not just gonna go along for the ride. Like, you need to be ready to ride, right?
Yeah.
Like and so he trained hard. I mean, we trained before we left, and because I didn't want everybody to be held up because of him, and everybody's going, let's wait for Kyson. The kid, now I didn't make him ride the 2 longest days. They were over 80 miles. So he only rode 5 of the 7 days, but he rode 288 miles
That's awesome.
in 5 days, and rode it with our lead group. I mean, one of the guys on our team this year has done 6 full Ironmans, and my son was right on his back tire, and we had a blast together. And I think, number one, he learned a lot from the men that were around, but also I think and this comes down to just sports in general, right? There's a lot of valuable life lessons that are learned on the middle of an asphalt road when it's 95 degrees, and
100%.
You've got 2 hours ahead of you to continue to go, and it's not very fun in that moment. There's a lot to be learned about yourself, but also your relationship with the Lord, and those around you, and how to work within those groups and things like that. So, man, it's just an awesome opportunity, and
That's great.
Something that I hope and pray that he looks back on years from now is just amazing memories that he and I got to have together.
Yeah, no, that's huge, man. And I think just and I think you and I would probably agree on this. And I say this all the time, sports, we're talking baseball specifically here, but sports in general make a terrible God. And sports are going to end for all of us at some point, and sports were never meant for sports themselves, right? They're only meant to point to something bigger. Right. And it's these kind of opportunities we have as dads, as you're riding and he's struggling and it's 95 degrees outside. The only purpose of that is that prepares him for the future.
No question.
And I talked about this on a previous podcast episode, but I remember very specifically, we almost lost our now 8-year-old a week into life. He stopped breathing on us. We were in pediatric ICU. It was rough. We couldn't figure out what was going on. And I remember thinking, I had a lot of failure in the game of baseball, as all of us did, but me probably more than most, because I wasn't that good. But it was those failures, those times of struggle and adversity and other things that prepared me for real life struggles, where I'm looking at my kid and I'm saying, what does it look like for me to fight for him right now? Baseball is meaningless, but it is preparing me for something that's so much bigger than baseball.
There's no question, Luke. And I struggle with this. And I was actually just sharing it with my wife a couple of weeks ago. I firmly believe, and it's weird that I feel like when I say this, I put myself in a weird position, because for my entire career, so 14 years working in college athletics, prior to this, I worked training youth athletes at a local performance clinic, where I did rehab and sports performance, and people paid money out of their pocket to run faster and jump higher. And so I've always earned my living off of the youth sports movement. With that being said, I've always, almost some ways, kind of shielded my kids from the youth sports movement, because I've seen how broken it is. And just a couple of weeks ago, my 13-year-old goes to a baseball tryout, because you have to try out in August for next year's season. So if you don't try out now, you don't have a spot on a team next March. And he goes to a tryout with 63 other kids for 22 spots. And it's a 3.5 hour tryout. And every throw he made across the infield was on a gun. And every base that he ran was on a stopwatch. And every hit, whether it was off a tee or front toss or off a machine, that measured exit velocity and launch angle. And I'm sitting here going, he's
Why?
13 years old, right? Why are we doing this? And I found myself in that moment, I'm watching him and I have anxiety. I'm anxious, right?
Sure.
And I'm texting my wife saying, how have I allowed myself to fall into this trap of being anxious? And I think what it really came down to is I know what he wants. He wants to be on a good team. He wants to be accepted. He wants, we all want that, right?
Sure.
We want to be good enough. And so I want that for him. But the reality is I'm sitting there going, man, we're doing all this, but we're missing the point. The point of youth sports is never to get the college scholarship. It's never to make it to the big leagues. If those things happen, that's awesome. High fives around, right? But that's not the goal. The goal is to learn at an early age how to work within a team, how to be a leader, how to work hard, how to accept failure. And these are all the things that, not to get into a larger discussion, but I think we're losing in our society, and the participation trophies, we're starting to see those things come to fruition. I mean, I can tell you right now, you look at the stats in college athletics, because this is the world I work in. The last 5 to 10 years, the rate of anxiety, depression, and suicidal tendencies within college athletes is through the roof.
Yeah.
It is absolutely skyrocketing. I would say as an athletic trainer, 50% of my world now revolves around mental health issues. And our sports psychologist is overworked every single day. And I believe it's because of a couple of reasons. Number one is the participation trophies have really hurt our kids, that they have never really had to experience failure. They might experience some losses here and there as part of sports, but never really somebody saying, you know what, you might not be good enough. And then they come to college, and guess what? Everyone else here is just as good or better than you are. And you better figure it out, or you're not going to be here very long. And same thing goes when some of our kids make this step to the next level of pro baseball, right? You better figure it out, or you're not going to be there very long. And how you handle that adversity will define you. And unfortunately, some of our kids don't handle that adversity very well. And I think the other part you're seeing is helicopter parenting, of parents never pushing the kids out and say, hey, you got to go fight this battle for yourself. You need to go talk to your coach. Yeah. You need to be the one that deals with this issue with your teammate or whatever else. And that's what you and I were taught when we were kids. And now we've got parents still of 22-year-old kids that are calling us and fighting their battles with their coaches. And they haven't learned that those are the things that people need to do on their own, because at some point you're going to have to, when you get out in the real world. And so I think it's extending
adolescence. It's extending adolescence.
No question. And so, we used to think of an 18-year-old being an adult. No, I mean, it's 22, 25, 26 now is what we're seeing. And listen, it's not all bad. I mean, and I constantly debate, what's more important, to have parents that are engaged and involved, which for the most part, we love parents that are engaged on a healthy level.
Sure.
But also, we can't have them hanging over top of them all the time as well at this level. And so they've got to be able to push some kids out of the nest a little bit. And so, I mean, we see those things, but my goal with my kids with youth sports is to use it just as a teaching tool. Yeah. And if it becomes more than that, they get to do something at the next level, then that's awesome. And I hope they do, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is to learn about yourselves and others. And unfortunately, youth sports has really changed. So that's not the focus anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And I see that, because I'm in a very similar space to you, of having been a college coach. I used to say to my wife all the time, because I prior to coaching at the collegiate level, I was doing, like college recruiting teams, working at indoor hitting facilities, giving lessons, doing that kind of world. And I used to tell my wife, I would never pay for my kid to work with me.
Right.
Like the amount of money strictly that's being invested into this thing, when we look at the reality of college baseball, and a fully funded Division I program has 11.7 scholarships, you got
Right.
35 guys on the roster.
Right.
Even at that level, you're playing Power 5 in the SEC, you're not getting out what you've put in.
No question.
And just economically, it doesn't make sense.
No.
And I see it at a younger and younger and younger ages, to the point that now my 8-year-old, someone came to me recently and asked what tech I was using with him. And
Yeah.
I said to throw the baseball in the backyard tech. Like, that's what we do. Like, I throw the baseball in the backyard with him. Like, I have no idea what his exit velocity is. And if I ever know that, I should really question some things.
Right.
Because it's not about that. It's never been about that. Like this whole time right now, I mean, even going back to me or you, I played collegiate baseball, but I played every other sport in high school. And now I see these kids specializing at younger and younger and younger ages. Like, ultimately, even for me, as I recruited college guys, I recruited athleticism. Yeah. And I see that going away now. And so it's a very different dynamic.
It is. And to your point, the research, it's interesting. So the research actually points away from early specialization.
Yeah.
I mean, virtually every study, whether you're looking at performance or injuries, virtually every study is very clear that early specialization is actually detrimental to young athletes. And so that's part of it. The reason I continue to push my kids to play multiple sports. But I also just want them to have fun, right? And have the experiences that we had. And my son is playing 7th grade football, and he's having trouble getting enough kids to come out to have a full team. I'm like, well, what about this kid? What about it? Well, he's playing baseball in the fall. And this kid, well, no, he just wants to focus on basketball. I'm like, you're 7th grader. You should be playing every sport you can and just having fun with it. And, and the tech issue, it's funny. I think the technology that's permeated athletics is good at our level, right? Division I college athletics. It's powerful. The things I can do with our athletes because of the technology, GPS and all this tracking software we have now, super cool. But it's amazing how it's permeated lower and lower. I mean, just the other day, my son is playing a video game on his phone, and he said, "Dad, I just hit a home run 456 feet, and the launch angle was only 18 degrees." And I'm like, what? You're on your phone, right? Like, what are you talking about? And it's gotten down into video games. Like, they put that in there. And so that it's ingrained. And so I'm not surprised some parent was like, "Hey, what are you doing with your 8-year-old? How are you telling what kind of arm speed he has? Or is he have too many, high load throws versus, low intensity throws?" And listen, I'm with you. Go buy a cheap glove at wherever at Academy and go play catch in your backyard and have fun with it, because there's too many opportunities down the road for all those other things to happen.
Well, and I see tech, as I agree with you. I think the tech is beneficial at the higher levels, but I even see it with high school age kids that are now getting so much information via the data, but they're not athletic enough to make adjustments on it. So they don't know what to do with it, but they're looking at it. Right. And nobody can really tell them what to do with it. And so then they're just bogged down in their head thinking about all these things when it's really made the game so much more complex than it needs to be.
Right. No question. And it's funny, we have this discussion too, because here at Missouri State, the baseball program, our head coach is entering his 40th season. Is our pitching coach, I think, is entering his 29th season, right? And our athletic trainer for baseball this will be his 34th year.
Wow.
So we've got this old school mentality leadership, but then we've got our hitting coach, our ops guy who helps with pitching, young guys, both played pro ball, both are much more into the statistics and understand all these things. And so they get frustrated with our other coaches because they don't really get into all of the technology. They don't really look at all the stats. And so they get frustrated with that. But then on the other side, those guys get frustrated with the young guys because they're like, why can't we just go pitch and throw strikes? Why do I have to care what the spin rate is? Why does that matter? I can tell you based on what I see what the spin rate is by how fast the ball moves.
Right.
And so we even get into this really interesting dynamic of old school versus new school. And the reality is, from my perspective, we need a mixture of both, right? We love the old school mentality of, I'm just going to go work and I'm going to put the work in that's needed so I can be really good and have that mentality, hard-nosed mentality, combined with, wait, we can mix in some technology here, because this does give us tools that we didn't know before, that we can objectify certain things that will make sense to the younger generation.
Sure.
But we can't go all in either way, in my opinion, because then, like you said, and I think it's a great observation, we have a generation that's getting a crazy amount of information, but they don't have the ability to react or adjust to that information. And
Sure.
so we also use some force play technology at the university, which is super cool, right?
Yep.
I can have somebody jump on a force plate and it will predict whether or not they're going to have a UCL injury as a pitcher.
Yep.
It blows my mind we can do this, but it's there, right? But when you talk to our people that we work with that developed all the software for the force play technology, you know, they'll say, well, you can test 5 times a day if you want, or you can test once a month. We recommend you test as often as you are willing to take action on the results of those tests. And if you're not willing to adjust and willing and have the knowledge and the know-how how to adjust, then stop testing, because
Sure.
you're wasting your time. And so it becomes, we try to sort of thread a needle and hit a sweet spot in the middle of enough testing. We have some data, but not so much that it completely dominates everything that we do.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So let me ask you this then, because really Fatherhood on the Field started out of really a desire to help dads engage with their kids through the game of baseball.
Sure.
But also having dads come to me who are saying, hey, my 8-year-old is interested in baseball. I don't know anything about it. Help me connect with him through it. So on that train of thought, looking at little league to 14-year-old baseball dads, you're talking injury prevention and things like that. What do you see as common factors coming into your level that you would want to tell dads at this stage, hey, this is where you should be thinking, this is how you can be helping your son or your daughter inside of their sport at this level?
So first thing that comes to mind is, number one, just have fun with it, right? And that's where I think we fall into this trap of our kid has to be doing more and being better, and I have to hire this coach and I have to do all those things. Have fun with it, right? And there's plenty of it. Trust me, you start getting, at least in our area in Springfield, Missouri, you start getting into 13, 14U baseball. If you're not playing competitive baseball, it's actually hard for those kids to find a team. It's hard for them to just find a rec team that they want to go and continue the love of the game. Whether they play in high school or college, it doesn't matter. It's hard to do that. So at early ages, man, just encourage them to have fun. Just have fun with it. Make it fun. Go out and play catch with your kid and toss them some balls. I mean, that's the number one priority. Then from there, they start getting to older age. I mean, if you start getting concerned about injury prevention, those types of things, I would say the first place I always start is body control and understanding how to control what they have, right? And so you start getting to these stages as kids are growing, they start to look like Bambi, right? And their limbs are everywhere. The goal there is, how do we control their body weight? And that's looking at simple things like just body weight movements, just body weight squats and push-ups and pull-ups and jumping, but jumping, working on landing and controlling that body weight, and not letting the knees collapse together or falling out over their toes or whatever else. It's how do I control my body in space? And the kids that get injured at those younger ages, those are the ones that can't control their own body weight. And so one of the things we talk about in the athletic world is be careful not to layer strength on top of dysfunction. Okay. So what we mean by that is, if you've got somebody that can't squat very well or can't lunge very well because they have poor technique or they don't know where their body is in space, one of the last things I want to do with those people is to add weight to it. So we have all these well-intended parents and coaches that think, I'm going to take my kid to the local, CrossFit gym, or I'm going to take them to the high school weight room and we're going to get them lifting early because they're going to be great athletes and whatever else. And they layer strength on top of this really faulty foundation, and that sets them up for failure down the road. And so while strength is the basic foundation of all athletic movements, if you don't have good high quality movement patterns and you layer strength on top of them, now you're setting them up for an injury, an ACL injury, ankle sprains, low back pain, whatever else down the road. So my first priority with young kids is always A, have fun, and then B, how do we sneak in some body weight control stuff while they're having fun and playing games and doing cone drills and running them through certain things, but not like super structure, but just allowing them to adapt to different environments. Motor learning happens in there, and even things like, people don't realize how powerful something simple like skipping is, right?
Yep.
And we're supposed to do those when we're on the playground, but kids don't play out on the playground like they did when we were kids, right?
Sure.
And so just having them go out and skip and run and do the things we did as kids, it's amazing how motor learning can happen in that situation, and they'll benefit down the road. So have fun, sneak in some body weight things here and there, teach them how to control their body weight. And then you can worry about, after they start to get through puberty, we start adding strength on top of that once they have good, clean foundational movement patterns.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And I think to add to that, engage in it with them.
Right.
Even looking, as you and your son are biking across Iowa, one of the things that I'm very passionate about for dads is to have physical fitness be something on their radar, right? And engage with their kids in it. So, play together, go to the gym together. We were recently, my family and I, we did a workout as a family. So I'm like pushing the baby in the stroller while we're running. Then the boys are coming in and they're doing body weight squats with me while I'm squatting, and just having those experiences together where you're saying, hey, this is important. Whether you're an athlete or not an athlete, it's irrelevant. This is important for all of us. And let's do it together. Let's engage with it. Let's go hike together. Let's go bike together. Let's go do these things together, so that we're talking about athletic movements in general, but we're also doing it and we're building memories. And you're going to look back on Ragbri and your son. Hopefully you're going to do it more years in the future, but those are memories you guys are going to have for a lifetime.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more. In the last 5, 8 years, whatever, I've really tried to be intentional. And listen, I get far more wrong as a father than I do get it right. I firmly believe that. I screw up a lot, but I try. It's not for lack of effort, right? And one of the things I have done over the last 5 to 8 years is intentionally work out. And with my kids still being young, and now just getting to the age where I feel comfortable with them training. We train together, but up until that, I work out and make sure my kids know that I'm working out, because I want to model that for them, right? The old saying, more is caught than taught, or whatever that saying is, right? And so I think if we model physical fitness, our kids are more likely to want to be fit down the road, right? If all of my kids see me doing is going to work and coming home and sitting on the couch and drinking a beer and eating dinner and watching TV, then that's probably what they're going to do someday.
Sure.
And so I've always tried to model that. But now, as my, especially my 13-year-old's getting to the point where I'm comfortable with him lifting weights and I'm comfortable with him doing some things, we work out together. And listen, I get it. I'm a Division I strength coach. I've got 20 years in the athletic space. I've got a great facility in my house. Not everybody has those opportunities. And so I don't want to make this sound like that's what everybody should be doing. But everybody can be doing a certain amount of that on their own, right? Like you said, go for a hike together, or go for, nightly walks, or everybody can go pick up a cheap bike and go for a bike ride together. It doesn't have to, have a bunch of medicine balls and racks and bumper plates and those types of things. If you have that opportunity, you have the knowledge, then I say go for it. And I can tell you 2 to 3 days a week, my son and I are in our basement working out together. And that's because I want him to know how important it is. But I also want him to know that, this is something that we are going to do together, and we're going to do it hopefully 20, 30 years from now. We're still going to be doing it together.
Right.
Probably not every day, but at least here and there. And I will tell you one of my struggles with that, and this is something where I think fathers that are trying to be intentional would agree with this, is one of my struggles is I want to teach accountability to him. And that, hey, if we say we're going to work out 3 days a week, we're going to work out 3 days a week because that's what we're going to do. And that's what it takes to get to what he says his stated goals are. They're not my goals. They're his goals. Sure. His goals are to be a better football player and a better basketball player and a better baseball player. Well, this is what we need to do from point A to get to point B. And that most kids at 13 age, I will say my 13-year-old's very mature. He's like 13 going on 18, which is not all good. Trust me. Sure. But he understands where he wants to be. And so I'm comfortable nudging him in that direction. My 10-year-old, he's not even close to the same maturity level. So I don't even have these discussions with him. But my struggle is when my son doesn't feel like working out, how much do I say, you know what, you said you were going to do this, so we're going to go do it. But I also don't want to push him so many times where then it becomes a job to him. Right. And he doesn't like it because guess what? If he hates it at 13, he's really going to hate it at 18 right. and 25 and 30 because he's going to look back and go, my dad used to make me do that. Right. And so I always question myself, am I making the right decision of holding him accountable, but also giving him the freedom to be a 13-year-old kid, right? Right. And so a lot of times I'll say, hey, do you want to work out? You want to go train today? This is what we said we were going to do. You up for that? And I would say 80% of the time he goes, yeah, Dad, I really do. And then 10% of the time they'll go, oh, okay, yep, let's go. And the other 10% of the time you go, but Dad, I really don't want to. I'm tired from this, or I've got this going on. And I go, you know what? That's cool. You're 13 years old. That's okay. And so I think we also need to keep that in perspective that our kids are young once, and let's have fun with it. And if we can't make it fun and they're not into it, then, you know, we need to be careful with that, cognizant of that. But I think it's ultimately a lot more fun when you're doing exactly what you just said, pushing kids in the stroller, out in the garage, driveway, doing body weight squats and push-ups and just having fun with it. And those are great opportunities for us to model our kids.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, and I know we're running short on time here, but, you know, in the same,
I'm sorry.
No, this is awesome because I think this has shreds of truth and impact even outside of athletic world, even outside of the gym, because your world is strength and conditioning and injury prevention and athletics. And you're allowing him to enter into that with you because that is your world. And for dads, you know, who aren't in that world, who aren't in athletic space, the same principle rings true of saying, how do we allow our kids to enter into our vocational work world with us, regardless of what that is?
Right.
Because it's creating those spaces and those times. I mean, I think because there are so many dads, as you stated a second ago, who go to work, come back, you know, from work, sit down on the couch, drink a beer, watch TV, and go to bed. And that's what their kids are seeing. And so I still remember the moments, you know, that I had with my dad at his office when I was 8. You know, my dad was an architect, but I remember those moments,
right?
Because he allowed me to enter into it with him. And I think for any dads who are listening to this, regardless of whether athletics is your world or not your world, allow your kids to enter into your world with you because they need to see you in that.
Dude, I can't agree more. And I mean, I grew up, my dad was in the construction industry, and I loved going to work with him. And, you know, looking back on it, I would like just go and pick up nails and you know, do grunt labor, whatever. But I was with my dad, and I agree. I mean, I think, you know, my kids have been raised in college gyms and on college football fields. And I mean, I had this discussion with Kyson the other day because he was our bat boy for our baseball team this spring. So he traveled with us. I mean, he got to go to O'Brate Stadium at Oklahoma State, $70 million brand new stadium, and traveled with us. And we played on ESPN. He's our bat boy. And we walk in the stadium, he looks around, he's like, Dad, is every place that you visit look like this? And I'm like, no, son, last week when we were in Conway, Arkansas, it was much different. And, you know, but my son's had opportunities, and I think someday he'll look at it and go, man, that's pretty special that I got to play catch in some pretty cool stadiums. And it's funny because I've always, and I didn't think about it this way, but everywhere we went together, I brought my glove and made sure he had his. And before the game, we always played catch, even if it was just 20 throws. in that stadium, wherever we were, whether that was home or away. And that was something I intentionally wanted to do, mostly because it was just fun, right?
Right.
Well, then when the Field of Dreams game came up a couple weeks ago, I'm sure you watched it or parts of it. That was the common theme amongst all the commentators and Kevin Costner and all these things that, man, let's go play catch. And they were all out there like little kids playing catch on the Field of Dreams field.
Right.
And I turned to my son, I said, this is why it's so important that you and I play catch when we travel with the baseball team. And it was just a little thing, but those are the things that we're going to both remember someday. And so I say that because I think it is pretty cool, and it's something I think I didn't realize I was doing, but was trying to be intentional about fatherhood. But just because you don't work in college athletics or in baseball in your world doesn't mean that your kids don't want to be in your space with you. It's special for kids to go to your office, even if you think, my work is really lame. Right. I sit and play on Excel as an accountant or actuary all day. Right. Like, your kids still look up to you like you're pretty freaking cool. And I think it is important for them to experience that. And so I'm with you. I would encourage dads to bring their kids to work when they have that opportunity, and to open the door to whatever that looks like. So if nothing else, your kids can understand what you do every day and why you work so hard to provide for your family.
Right.
And what that looks like, because money doesn't grow on trees, and opportunities don't grow on trees, and we create our own opportunities to a certain degree. And kids need to understand and see why and how that happens. And so I love what you just said of, we have to bring our kids into our vocation, whatever that is.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't have to be, the stadium at Oklahoma State either. I remember as a kid, in the backyard doing, amazing plays with my dad in the backyard, where he would like push me into the rose bush. Like, he's throwing the ball as close to the rose bush as he can get. And, but I remember those moments of, wherever that is, and just creating those memories. I think that's huge. And it's awesome that your kids get the opportunity to be with you in that.
Yeah.
And I know
I'm
that
definitely blessed.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, hey, brother, I know you got to run. I really appreciate you you taking the time to jump on here with us. Appreciate you as a dad, as a husband, and just following your journey on social media of fatherhood and intentionality. So appreciate you, and appreciate you taking the time.
Well, look, Luke, I couldn't agree more. I'm right there with you. I appreciate watching you and your family, and you and I don't get to talk near as much as I would like, but I'm grateful for your friendship and your leadership and everything you're doing to grow the kingdom. And you set a great example for all of us. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to catch up and just to be a part of what you're doing. And so, I wish we could do more.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good, man.